The van pulled onto a long driveway and followed it to a stop in front of the historical landmark known as Barley House. A logo on the side of the van read, "Beyond the Veil Investigations." The BVI team were ready to embark on their next paranormal adventure. The house loomed before them, an eerie relic of the past, partially hidden by overgrown vegetation. They could hardly contain themselves as they stepped out of the van and began to gear up with all the tools needed to capture evidence of the supernatural. This was going to be a Halloween to remember. A friendly, middle-aged woman stood by the front door, a key in hand, ready to grant them access. Her welcoming smile contrasted with the sinister reputation of Barley House. This was actually the second Barley House to stand here, a fact forgotten by many. The original house, built in the early 1800s by Everett Barley and his family, had been plagued by rumors of devil worship and occult practices. Tales of people disappearing, especially around Samhain, haunted the town. It was believed that the Barleys sought to appease the spirit of death itself. Then, one fateful night, Barley House burned down with the family trapped inside, their dark secrets forever lost. Nearly 100 years later, in the 1920s, Zachary Chase and his wife Eleanor had rebuilt Barley House precisely as it had been. However, on the night of their first Halloween there, the couple was brutally murdered, their bodies discovered with stab wounds. Many came to believe that the Barleys had returned that night, carrying on their ritualistic sacrifices. Since then, the house had stood vacant, its reputation as a haunted place growing stronger. The local historical society now owned and maintained Barley House, but no one else had dared to enter its dark corridors until today. The BVI intended to capture evidence of the rumored hauntings for their popular paranormal vlog. 4 eager investigators in their 30s stood by the van, marveling at the wonder of Barley House. The group consisted of a couple, Miles and Rowan, who were the senior investigators on this case, Arthur, the tech guru, and Liam, whose love of history outweighed his fear of the unknown. They felt ready for anything and were determined to uncover the truth. "This is gonna be good," Miles exclaimed. "I sure hope so," Arthur replied with a hint of concern. "We can't really afford another dud right now." "We'll be fine," Rowan reassured them. "Besides, this could be the one that catapults us to the big leagues." "Hey," Liam chimed in, "where's that EMF meter with the tape around it? I like that one better." Rowan reached into the back of the van, eventually pulling out the preferred EMF meter, handing it to Liam. The team was ready for the investigation. As they approached the front porch, the lady who had granted them access offered a final word of caution. "You sure you want to do this?" "Yes, ma'am," Miles replied confidently. "We've been excited for this one a long time now. We really appreciate you allowing this," Rowan added. The lady's smile remained, and there was a hint that she might not fully buy into the legends surrounding Barley House. "Oh, maybe it'll drum up some business for the town. Little bit of mystique can go a long way." With that, she closed the door behind them, leaving the investigators alone in the dimly lit parlor of Barley House. Miles glanced around at his team. "All right, folks, let's get going. We've got a lot of ground to cover today." The others nodded in agreement, their anticipation growing as they ventured further into the dark and mysterious Barley House. As they stood in the front parlor, looking around in amazement, Liam said, "I wish May and Hugo could have been here for this one." Liam held an EMF meter, and Arthur had a camera. They started their investigation on the ground floor, while the others headed upstairs, Miles filming Rowan as she moved her EMF meter around, watching it for spikes. Arthur followed Liam down a hallway, filming him as he checked every corner with the EMF meter. Liam remarked, "Nothing abnormal here, not yet anyway." "I feel pretty good about this one," said Arthur. They continued their exploration, eventually entering a kitchen. Liam suddenly halted, glancing back at Arthur. "Did you just feel a cold spot?" Arthur confirmed. "I totally did." "Anything on the meter?" Liam reported. "There was a bit of a spike, and then it was gone." "That's a start," Arthur responded with a grin. Meanwhile, upstairs, Miles and Rowan walked through one of the bedrooms. Rowan marveled at the lavish furnishings and asked, "Can you imagine what it must have been like to live like this?" Miles considered it and replied, "It's pretty great. Maybe we can pattern our own place after it." Rowan smiled and said, "Maybe. Just without the spooks." Miles added, "If there even are any spooks." They left that room and entered a study filled with an extensive collection of books on the occult. Rowan moved her EMF meter around, getting a spike when she passed over the books. "Interesting," she said. Her steps echoed softly through the study. Miles followed her every move with his DSLR camera, capturing her exploration of the room's antiquated treasures. As she wandered amidst shelves of dusty old tomes, her fingers traced lightly along the spines of mysterious books. Her gaze was drawn to a wall adorned with various curiosities, and there, mounted prominently, was an ornamental dagger. Its blade gleamed wickedly, a dark allure seemingly radiating from the intricately designed hilt. Rowan paused, her fingers hovering near the hilt, drawn to it by an inexplicable fascination. A shiver of apprehension coursed through her, and for a moment, she felt a weight, an unseen darkness that seemed to cling to the ancient weapon. She couldn't help but mutter to herself, "There's something about this dagger. Something dark." Miles continued filming, capturing her hesitation as she contemplated the ornate blade. But Rowan quickly shook her head, dismissing her own unease as nothing more than the product of her vivid imagination. In a hushed tone, she muttered, "It's just an old decoration, Rowan. Don't let your mind play tricks on you." Arthur and Liam entered the master bedroom on the ground floor, determined to make contact with the spirits. "Let's see if we can get anything on the recorder," Arthur suggested. Liam attached the EMF meter to his belt and pulled out a digital recorder, switching it on and holding it out. "Hello," he said. "We're here to make contact with the Barley family." They waited in silence, giving the spirits an opportunity to respond. "Is there anyone here from the Barley family?" Liam asked. "Everett Barley," said Arthur. "Ava Barley," added Liam. "Everett Jr.?" Arthur inquired, but there was no immediate response. As they continued their attempts at communication, Liam moved around the room, eventually stopping at a fancy antique vanity. On the vanity, there was a music box. Curious, he lifted the lid, and the music box began to play a haunting tune. On camera, Arthur suddenly saw a shadow moving through the room. Reacting quickly, he ran after it, with Liam closely following. They found themselves at the door leading down into a dark basement. Cold dread settled upon them, and they stopped, their fear intensifying in the face of the unknown. With Arthur leading the way, they descended the basement stairs, determined to confront the unknown. "We're doing this," Arthur asserted, trying to shake off the unease that had settled upon them. Reluctantly, Liam followed, anxiety etched across his face. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, Arthur began to see things differently through the camera's lens than they appeared in real life. The camera's view presented a distorted and nightmarish version of the basement, with signs of destruction and scorch marks. Perplexed, he rubbed his eyes, hoping to clear his vision. But the camera continued to reveal a warped reality. He walked cautiously into the middle of the basement floor, still watching the unsettling view on his DSLR screen. Meanwhile, Liam remained at the bottom of the stairs, his unease growing. "Something ain't right about this, Art," Liam said, voicing his concerns. "You're not wrong," Arthur acknowledged, but then he spotted a female figure in the darkness at the far end of the basement, approximately 10 feet away. She stood with her back turned towards him, slowly starting to face him. Through the camera's lens, Arthur saw a seemingly normal woman dressed in 1800s attire. However, Liam's view was vastly different. Standing across from them was a charred, skeletal figure with black, sunken eyes. Fear coursed through Liam, and he began to backpedal up the stairs. "Art," he said, slowly climbing. But Arthur seemed transfixed by what he was seeing on the screen. The figure shuffled across the floor in his direction, leaving dark footprints on the concrete. "Art!" yelled Liam, his voice trembling with fear. Arthur finally came to his senses. He turned to look at Liam, seeing his expression of pure terror. Then he turned back towards the approaching figure, now revealed as the charred and disfigured corpse of Ava Barley. With an unholy swiftness, she was upon him, her bony hands stretching out. A second later, she seized his face and twisted his head completely around, snapping his neck. His lifeless body crumpled to the floor, the camera shattering on the cold concrete. Panicked and horrified, Liam screamed and sprinted up the remaining stairs. Liam's heart pounded as he fled from the malevolent presence. He felt the coldness of the apparition right at his heels, an icy reminder that danger was just inches away. As he dashed through the first corner on the ground floor, his fear-induced haste led to a painful collision with the doorframe of the master bedroom. It was as if a force had pushed him from behind. Crashing into the doorframe, he stumbled and fell hard to the floor. Panic and adrenaline coursed through his veins as he crawled frantically past the bed, heading toward a window on the other side of the room. The vanity with the music box still lay there, the box's eerie tune persisting. Desperation clawed at Liam as he rolled onto his back, continuing to crawl backward, his eyes locked on the approaching specter of Ava Barley. Her skeletal form advanced with outstretched, bony fingers, closing in on her terrified prey. A sudden realization dawned on him, a connection forming between the haunting apparition and the music box. With Ava just feet away, he lunged for the music box, his trembling hands snatching it up. In an act of sheer desperation, he hurled the music box into the adjacent wall. The music ceased abruptly, shattering the haunting melody. An anguished cry escaped from Ava Barley as she began to disintegrate, vanishing into a mist that quickly dissipated, leaving behind a shaken and tearful Liam, who had narrowly escaped her deadly clutches. Upstairs, Miles and Rowan had heard the commotion but had been unable to react in time. They watched in horror as the door to the study slammed shut with a deafening thud, sealing them inside. Miles, his panic mounting, immediately began struggling with the stubborn doorknob, attempting to wrench it open. "What the hell?" Miles exclaimed, straining against the door's resistance. Desperation filled the room as they realized they were trapped. Rowan, quick to react, reached for her walkie-talkie and called out into it, "Arthur, Liam, what's happening?" Liam's voice crackled through the walkie-talkie, filled with fear and urgency.
"We have to get out of here,"
he cried. Downstairs, Liam had managed to reach the front door. The old wooden door, however, seemed to be held by some sinister, unseen force, resisting all his efforts to open it. "Get out now!" Liam yelled into the walkie. Realizing he had no other choice, he decided to break through a window. He grabbed a nearby wooden chair, determined to shatter a parlor window, creating an escape route. But just as he was about to hurl the chair with all his might, a powerful force struck him in the lower back, causing him to drop the chair. Liam crumpled in pain, spinning around on the floor to face his assailant. Standing menacingly over him was the grotesque apparition of Everett Barley Jr., the entity's sinister figure and sunken eyes sending shivers down Liam's spine. In its bony grip, the phantom clutched an antique baseball bat, seemingly crafted from something like an axe handle. The chilling anticipation of a lethal blow filled the room as the corpse raised the bat, ready to strike again. Summoning all the strength he could muster and pushing through the pain in his lower back, Liam managed to dodge the impending attack. Rising to his feet, he ignored the searing discomfort and raced for the stairs. As he began to ascend the carpeted steps, he felt the same bone-chilling coldness lurking just behind him, a presence from the beyond that seemed to be closing in. In the chaos of the haunted Barley House, Miles and Rowan struggled with the door of the study. Just as they were about to panic, the door finally yielded to Miles's relentless kicking, swinging open with a loud creak. Their hearts raced as they rushed out onto the second-floor landing, their minds filled with concern for Liam. Liam, after narrowly avoiding a deadly strike from the baseball bat-wielding specter of Everett Barley Jr., made it to the top of the stairs. Miles caught Liam by the shoulders, looking him in the eye, and screamed, "What happened?" Without a moment's hesitation, Liam wrestled himself free of Miles's grasp, rushing toward the broken door of the study. Miles and Rowan turned, their breaths catching in their throats as they suddenly stood face to face with the twisted corpse of Everett Jr. The gruesome figure raised the bat again, ready to strike, and Miles instinctively moved both himself and Rowan just far enough back to avoid being struck. Everett Jr. raised the bat once more, his bony hands trembling as he prepared to deliver another blow. Miles took action, seizing the bat with both hands. He kicked at the advancing corpse, causing ash and black smoke to rise into the air around them. With a determined yank, Miles managed to wrench the bat from Everett Jr.'s grasp, freeing himself from the immediate threat. Standing just inside the study, watching the struggle unfold, Liam had an epiphany, recalling what happened with the music box. "Break it!" he cried desperately. Miles and Rowan, puzzled but fueled by Liam's urgency, glanced at each other, then back at the bat. "Break the bat!" yelled Liam. His conviction was enough to convince Miles, who slammed the bat down onto the sturdy banister beside him. It didn't shatter immediately, but Everett Jr. wailed in pain and rage, his form quivering. With unwavering determination, Miles swung the bat down onto the banister again, feeling it begin to splinter. The corpse reached Miles, its cold hands clasping onto his arm. In one final, powerful strike across the banister, the bat cracked, sending its top half over the edge, crashing to the floor below. The effect was immediate. Everett Jr.'s anguished wails filled the room as his form disintegrated into dry clumps of ash at Miles's feet. The malevolent spirit had been vanquished. The group stood there in shock, the weight of what happened sinking in. Rowan turned to Liam, her eyes pleading for an explanation. "Art's dead," he said with a heavy heart, eliciting a gasp of disbelief from Rowan. Miles dropped the handle of the broken bat and immediately moved to comfort her. "It was Ava Barley," Liam continued, his voice quivering. "She killed him." An eerie silence enveloped them, their minds grappling with the surreal horrors they had witnessed. They were paranormal investigators, seekers of the unknown, but nothing could have prepared them for this. The boundaries between the living and the dead had blurred in a way that defied logic. "Where is she now?" asked Miles. Liam, shaken but determined, answered Miles's question. "She's gone. She fell apart when I smashed her music box." The fear still clung to them, but Miles knew they had to escape this accursed house. The absence of Arthur and the ominous presence of Everett Sr. left them with no other choice. "We're leaving," Miles declared, his voice resolute. But before Liam could step out of the study, an unearthly hand shot out from behind him, clenching a fistful of his hair. A pained gasp escaped his lips as Everett Sr. drove his ornamental dagger deep into the middle of Liam's back. Rowan's horrified scream pierced the air, and Miles shouted, "No!" Liam fell to his knees, his wide, terrified eyes fixed on Miles and Rowan before he collapsed face first in the doorway. The charred corpse of Everett Sr. emerged from the shadows, brandishing the bloodied dagger and pointing it menacingly at the remaining survivors. Miles and Rowan stood there, their eyes locked on the soulless black voids that were Everett Sr.'s eyes. Miles inched his hand towards Rowan, intending to pull her closer to the stairs and closer to her escape. But in a blink, Everett Barley moved across the floor like a malevolent specter, shrouded in a cloud of black smoke. Miles acted in the nick of time, catching the corpse's arms just as they collided into the banister. The impact broke a few of the fragile spindles, and the structure teetered on the brink of collapse. Rowan, desperate to pull the corpse away from Miles, tried in vain to intervene. The struggle continued, the banister creaking and groaning as it gave way. The blade of the dagger inched ever closer to Miles's throat as he fought to maintain his hold over the relentless corpse. It was clear that Everett Barley was infused with a sinister, powerful darkness, a manifestation of his wicked practices in life. Then, in the nick of time, Rowan spotted a bronze candlestick holder on a nearby table. She snatched it up and swung it with all her might, striking the back of the corpse's head. The vile specter turned to her with a menacing growl, driven by unearthly rage. It attempted to break free of Miles's grasp, and in the process the dagger inched closer to Rowan. With determination, Rowan swung the candle holder again and knocked the dagger from Everett Barley's skeletal grasp. It hit the wall with a clatter and fell to the floor. Rowan moved to retrieve the fallen dagger, but Barley pulled against Miles, attempting to stop her. However, Miles locked his arms around the corpse's waist and pulled with all his might. They both went tumbling through the weakened banister and plummeted to the floor below, breaking straight through with a bone-jarring impact and crashing into the basement. Rowan was left standing alone on the second-floor landing, terror gripping her heart. "Miles!" she cried out over the edge. The dust began to settle, revealing the battered form of Miles on the basement floor. He was slowly stirring, coughing and groaning in pain. "Ro," he weakly managed to say. Rowan grabbed the fallen dagger and peered over the edge once more, her heart pounding with anxiety. Suddenly, Everett Barley was atop Miles, his cold, charred hands attempting to grab Miles by the throat. Miles struggled against the relentless grip. "Rowan, get out!" he choked out, his voice desperate, but Rowan refused to abandon him. Quickly, she spotted a nearby door, cracked it open, jammed the blade of the dagger through the gap, and then slammed the door shut, trapping the deadly blade in place. She began furiously swinging the candle holder at the dagger's hilt, hitting it repeatedly. Miles below was gasping for life, and Everett Barley's grip grew ever more relentless. With a final powerful blow, Rowan successfully separated the hilt from the blade, sending it clattering across the floor, coming to a stop near Liam's lifeless body. Miles was no longer moving, no longer struggling, no longer conscious. Everett Barley released his stranglehold on Miles' throat and sat up straight, his power rapidly waning. As the entity watched, his hands withered and crumbled to pieces, disintegrating into ash. With a final, agonizing bellow, the rest of him crumbled as well, his essence reduced to a cloud of ash and smoke. Rowan's heart ached as she called out for Miles over the edge of the landing, but the thick black smoke obscured her view. The ominous darkness billowed up from the giant hole in the parlor floor below her and filled the room. The house shuddered on its foundations, and furniture toppled over as wood rained down from the walls and ceiling. Rowan glanced back at Liam one last time, then bolted down the stairs, calling Miles' name repeatedly. The front door swung open as the quaking intensified, urging her to escape. She sprinted through the door and collapsed near the BVI van in the driveway, sobbing as she believed Miles had been claimed by the malevolent entity. The house continued to crumble, debris and black smoke billowing from the collapsing roof. A moment later, a basement window at the side of the house exploded outward, and Miles crawled through, dragging himself across the grass to escape the house's impending collapse. Rowan raced to his side, helping him to his feet, and together, they moved farther away from the house. They watched, waiting for its inevitable collapse, but the shaking eventually ceased. The house remained battered but still standing, as if the darkness inside had been vanquished. Miles and Rowan sank to the ground, holding each other tightly, emotionally and physically exhausted, uncertain about how they would begin to explain the horrors they had witnessed, the deaths of their friends, the damage to the house. In that moment, all they knew for sure was that neither of them would attend another investigation.